Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is down here. Not sure if you can see her. There she is, just in shot. We both hope you are all happy and healthy doing the things that you love with those that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. Hit the like button for me on the video if you enjoy this sort of content. Hit the subscribe button as well if you haven't already. We're not far away from 25k. It's very exciting. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. And yesterday, guys, we did have the friendly between Newcastle United and Tottenham. 1-1 was the final score, went to penalties. Brian Hill, I think, was the only player that missed, so we ended up losing. But in a nutshell, it wasn't about the result. It wasn't really even about performances. It was more about, obviously, giving a chance for the Australian side of our fan base to get a chance to see our players up front, up close and personal, and, of course, their favourite guy, Big Ange Postecoglou. For what it's worth, my take on the fact that it's a post-season friendly, as I've said before, financially, it makes sense, and I do think it's important to try and squeeze in where you can, where possible, the opportunity for the fans and the brand to be expanded in overseas markets. So I'm 100% okay with it, but for what it's worth, if you are Australian and you were interested to know how neutrals felt about this in the UK, well, on TalkSport yesterday, it was described as a disgrace, outrageous, and unbelievably selfish, I think were the phrases I heard by a couple of the journalists who obviously are only looking at it from one side of the coin. But that's not how I see it, and who cares what neutrals on TalkSport think anyway. Look, guys, after the game, there was lots of communication from Ange around what he sees as necessary and important. I think he mentioned the fact that it's pretty evident that we need to do a lot of work at the top end of the pitch in the forward line in strengthening this summer. He mentioned, obviously starting the season with options. Didn't really talk about the strength of the options, but he just talked more about the fact that we had certain players that we lost through either injury or leaving the club. Perisic, Solomon, Richalison, everybody up there has had some sort of injury, and it's been quite a frustrating affair. Even players like Timo Werner obviously came in January and also got injured towards the end. So we had a very, stop-starty kind of consistency with regards fitness and form. And whether the skill level is there or not, I think most of us would agree there isn't. Now, I've got a list here of maybe, 20 names of players that we've been linked with over the last couple of months, maybe leading back to January, that we're looking towards the summer for certain deals for strikers and for wingers. Each of them, for me, improved Tottenham in some way, form, or another regarding what it is we're looking for. You have to bake into mind the market that we're in. In terms of strikers, for me, it's a seller's market. There is very high demand. There's very short supply for top quality strikers that are out there. For the wingers that we're looking for, I'm not so sure it is a seller's market. I would say it could be considered more of a buyer's market because look, players that can take players on, one-on-one specialists, they're 10 a penny. They really are. Everywhere you look, there are great players that can do that. The difference between great players and the very best are the ones that can look up at the right time, that can keep their head about them, that can pick the pass, that can cross the ball, put it into the danger zone, that also have the ability, to have high frequency of confidence in shooting when necessary, the high conversion percentages of shots to shots on target, and then shots on target to goal. If those numbers all look good, they're the difference between £20 million players and £60-70 million players. And the last kind of final piece of the puzzle that Tottenham system looks for, are players that are also off the ball, very willing to to be high intensity, high press, and good at trying to recover the ball in the final third. And again, there's quite a lot of those players around, if you're looking for them. Tottenham just don't seem to have very many. And the ones that we do have that I think where the stats are good enough, they're just not fit enough, often enough, to be able to rely on them. Players like Manuel Solomon, for what it's worth, statistically, do everything that you need in a player for this particular system. But he's never fit. He never has been fit enough wherever he's been. It's like having a Ferrari on the driveway, but there's no wheels on the car. What's the point? And so how Tottenham go about their business this summer in that particular area is going to be interesting. You have to also factor in, guys, that it's a very busy summer with internationals. You've got the Euros, of course. You've also got the Copa America. You've got the Olympics at the tail end of the summer into the autumn, which doesn't affect the vast majority of players, but Tottenham obviously are a team that do look at young players, and so the Olympics might be a factor for Tottenham's business if they're looking to kind of combine youth potential with ready now, here now, to play now players. And so what I've done is I've got this list together here of the players we've been linked with. First and foremost, before we get into that, Fabrizio Romano did mention, he came out and spoke about Tottenham and saying it's too early right now for him to be able to give hot links or top names that Tottenham are looking at in regards the forward line, but he would expect a couple of names at least coming in that regard, depending on who leaves the club. I would expect Bryan Gil, for what it's worth, to leave this summer. There was a piece of news out this morning that said, his performance yesterday against Newcastle, the fact that he was the only one who missed the penalty, kind of summed up his efforts, his season under Ange Postecoglou, and it kind of seems as though Tottenham and Bryan Gil was just a mistake. A good player, but maybe just not ready for the Premier League or not right for Tottenham. Either way, he'll probably leave. Now, Manor Solomon, as I said, I like the player, but we never get to see him. If someone was to come in and bid for him, I think Tottenham would probably let him go. Timo Werner, the noise out about him, there was a quote from Ange about him that basically said, that's the conversation that we're still having with Leipzig. And that, it depends on the terms, depends on the player, but there's time there, so it's not necessarily something we're kind of focused on. But there is that deadline coming up with regards to it. I don't know. I spoke to some people in the community about that. They perceive that to mean that we're signing him, and they think that it's just a matter of time. I'm not sure I see it that way. I don't think Ange particularly wants him, but I'm not sure if he's going to come out and say that. If you bear in mind that he also said before one of the games at the end of the season in the pre-match presser, he was asked about Timo Werner, and he kind of dismissed it and was like, mate, I'm not talking about this right now. It's not a priority. So I feel like if there was, a lot more desire on the part of Ange to sign this guy permanently, I think there'd be a lot more kind of positive noise, but instead it's a lot of kind of ambiguity and vague answers or dismissiveness, around the topic. So I don't particularly see it happening unless there is action on the outgoing way regarding Solomon and Bryan Gil, and or one or two of the kind of young players. And for what it's worth, we saw a couple of Tyrese Hall yesterday. Maybe he's not a winger anyway, but Santiago, the other guy, Iago Santiago, all looked quite clever when they came on. I never know how to judge the youth team until you get to see them in the first team in competitive matches. For what it's worth, most of the young players that Tottenham have got in the under-21s, whenever I see them play first team minutes, I haven't been that impressed with them. Dane Scarlett, I've never particularly seen him do anything brilliant. Jamie Donnelly, I know these guys have only had a few minutes here and there. I'm just being honest with you. Thus far, they always look brilliant in the under-21 level, but when it goes to the first team, never really see them do anything that's eye-catching. Anyway, so let's go on the presumption that we don't know what's going to happen with Timo Werner, but that if he is coming in, then it's because you're losing Bryan Gil and like a Manor Solomon. Then these are the sorts of names we've been linked with, right? For the wide guys, which, as I say, is more of a buyer's market. Now, it depends whether you want to go for homegrown. You've got the club-trained guys, but these are the names we've been linked with. Hudson-Odoi, who, again, I said yesterday or the day before yesterday, a player that you're not going to like the sound of when you hear it, even when you look at his overall stats, it's not going to excite you. But in terms of does he do what we're looking for in a winger, 100% he does. His stats look kind of average on overall, but in terms of the specifics of what you're looking for, he's up there at the very best. Marcus Edwards, homegrown plus club trained, important for the Europa League rules. Illing Jr., another homegrown player. I'm not sure about Illing Jr. When I've looked at him up, like running through the Y Scout tool, I see potential, but I see a lot of, that's not going to excite me. I don't think he elevates us. Tottenham obviously linked massively with players like Ivan Toney for the striker role, which we'll come to in a moment. But in terms of looking at wide guys, if Tottenham are turning their attention towards Brentford this summer, and if there's any relationship or good conversations that might be able to happen regarding Serge Reguilon, for example, then there's two other players that I very much think that are at Brentford that I really like and think wouldn't do badly in a Tottenham 11 for the way we play, and that is, of course, Mbeumo and even Wissa, who had a wonderful season for Brentford. It'd be interesting to see what happens if there's any interest there. What about Bakayoko from PSV? Last summer, he almost moved to Nottingham Forest. Didn't happen. Has had another great season. A brilliant, brilliant dribbler. A wonderful output. Does everything you want. And for me, is a really exciting prospect. We've been linked with Danny Olmo, who's more of a kind of 10, but can absolutely float to left or right, can do a lot of the dribbling, very tricky footwork stuff, and has got a turn of pace on him. All these players improve Tottenham. Obviously, at Palace, you've got Eberechi Esse and Elise. Both those players have got release clauses that Tottenham could trigger. And remember, guys, there's a lot of things happening in the Premier League right now with new managers moving into new clubs. Obviously, Chelsea looking for a new manager, so they won't be able to do their business until they get their new manager in all likelihood. What about what's happening at Manchester United? With regards, Ivan Toney, Fabrizio Romano said that it's between, if there is going to be movement with Toney, it's likely to go to Tottenham or to Manchester United. Well, is Erik ten Hag going to be at Manchester United? All signals point to no, and so Tottenham have the opportunity. And hopefully, if you listen to what Ange has been saying, we've been doing our work. We've been doing our homework. The work has already been done on identifying the prospects, which is why you hope that one or two of the names that are on here that have got into the press are not just made up nonsense, but are actually from some sort of substance. Because all of these now, or most of these names, improve Tottenham's first 11, 100%. And like I say, with Tottenham's FFP strength and the positioning, trying to get ahead of the June 30th deadline, with the fact that you have the Euros coming up, time is of the essence, but you also have that advantage of potentially one or two of the other teams in the Premier League that will be looking to improve in the same positions as you are, having managerial changes and pivots and considerations, then there might be delays in their ability to act. Now, we already heard Ange say he wants to get his business done early, so maybe, just maybe, we might start to see some movement coming in the next few days or maybe next week or two. Let's see who else we've been linked with. Rafinha, of course, at Barcelona, ex-Leeds. Brilliant player. He's right at the top end of the price bracket, but in terms of statement signing, in terms of doing what he does, will he help Tottenham? Can he do the press stuff without the ball? I think he absolutely can. He's someone that is not afraid to have a crack. He's not afraid to take players on. He does everything that we need him to do. And if he's unhappy at Barcelona, or if there's any chance that can happen, and we've still got enough budget left over to go in other directions, I would be very, very excited about him. Then we go to places that we went to before, like Andreas Skov Olsen. I've mentioned Skov Olsen for 3 seasons. Another season, last season for him, the one that's just finished, with over 25 goals in all competitions, playing as a right winger that can drift into the left. This guy bangs in the goals. He's a wonderful crosser of the ball, a fabulous dribbler in close control. He works all day for the team. And I've always liked him. I will continue to like him. Obviously, question marks around the step up in competition if he was to go from that league to the Premier League. But that's the same with all of those sorts of players. And it's the same with young players generally. If Tottenham are going to always be looking for youth, you always have to bake in the risk of you're buying potential, not perfection. Staying at Club Brugge, what about Antonio Nusa? His injuries are behind him. Is he going to go to Brentford? Or if he does go to Brentford, does that mean, as I said earlier, that maybe there's less desire there for a Wissa or an Mbeumo in the future? What does that look like for Tottenham? Are we going to resurrect that deal? Interesting stuff. And the last name, I'm sure I'm missing loads here, guys, but this was just putting this together. Matteo Soulé, the Juventus right winger, the next Di Maria, they call him over there, I think, Argentinian guy. An interesting player as well. Was that the way we're going to go, or are we going to look for someone more established that we know we can do it? Those are just some of the wingers that I could remember writing down on the way out of that door this morning that we're all linked with. In terms of strikers, again, he wants to get some business done early. Well, let's look at these from goal numbers. You've got Albert Gudmundsson, who can do the winger stuff as well, who can play the 9, the false 9, the 10, can do a little bit of everything, loves to drive the ball. Plays for a team called Genoa. As you may remember, last week I did a video about Everton struggles 777 partners who also own Genoa. So just keep in the back of your mind that you might find in the coming days, weeks, months or whatever, that Genoa may also be in financial difficulties if it is true that 777 Partners are one big giant Ponzi scheme, and if so, then does Goodmanson fit the bill? As I say, very much a versatile utility player. Alex Isak, a player that I would love to see at Tottenham, has been linked to Tottenham. There was commentary on the game yesterday saying that he's obviously linked very heavily with Arsenal, but could he also come to Tottenham? I would love to see it. Newcastle fans would say there's no chance that they're going to let him go if they can avoid it, and it would take a monster bid, a bid that's probably, given what else Tottenham need to do this summer, outside of Tottenham's price range. What about Gyökeres? Ex-Coventry player, 45 goals this season in all competitions in the last, or is it 45 in this? I think it is in this season alone, over in Portugal. Unbelievably consistent in his output, this guy. Would he come to Tottenham? Would Tottenham pay the money? How much money is it going to cost to get him? There's so much transition, so much kind of levelling up of fees. I kind of feel like Daniel Levy would look at that one and just think, we could have got him 12 months ago for this, or we could have got him 24 months ago for a fraction of that price, and now it would be just a little bit sickening to pay the numbers you have to pay. But look, the guy is quality, and he seems to do it at whatever level he's been asked of. Benjamin Sesko, a player we've been linked with several times now. He's also been linked with Arsenal. I love this guy, 20 years of age. Hasn't scored as many goals as the rest of the names on the list. Only 14 goals this season in all competitions, but for me has got a little bit of everything about him. I would take the risk on this one. I think he's absolutely sensational. Evan Nilsson, 24 goals this season. We were linked with him earlier on this week, I think it was. I think I did a video about him. Look, I think he's a good player, a really good player, but if you remember from the video, I said I just don't think he fits what we're looking for, and the way that Porto play is set up with the players they have to play a certain style that would require Tottenham to do a lot of shifting in the way that they approach the final third, and I just don't think it's a good fit, so I'd be very surprised if it happened. Santiago Jimenez, the name that just won't go away. Links keep coming in. For me, it's between him and Tony, I think are the most likely names that we get. One of them, but maybe if Richalison does deem it time to move on, maybe if he wants to be star boy, because I do worry about his mental health, his mental strength, resilience. When he's happy and he's injury free, he's had a good time at Tottenham in the last year, but the vast majority of the time it hasn't been successful. He likes to talk openly about his mental struggles a lot, and we are trying to do something at Tottenham, and can you really rely and put all that pressure and I guess, reassurance within yourself that you have the guy who has the mental resilience to be able to handle it? I'm not sure. So if a good bid could come in for him, maybe you could the money you'd get for him, you could spend on Ivan Toney, and then Tottenham could also go and get a Santiago Jimenez. And in having both of those strikers, what you have is one who is Premiership proven in Toney. He's 28 years old, has got all of the history behind him, so you know that he's going to score goals. But obviously he's had a bit of a bad season, and you're not sure about the personality side. We've discussed that before. In Jimenez, you have a youngster who's, for me, a brilliant piece of potential. Fantastic start to his career, slightly poorer second half of last season just finished. But between the two, you have top quality, you have someone who's a little bit older, who you can rely on to score goals, and you have a guy who's coming up, and if he can translate to the Premier League, then you have a wonderful talent on your hands as well. That would be an ideal scenario for me. Sell Richarlison, bring in both Toney and Jimenez. Last names on the list that I've got to mention to you, of course, don't forget Dominic Solanke. That name won't go away. Premiership proven. A lot of people think he's underwhelming as a name because he's coming from Bournemouth. But listen, as Bournemouth have progressed their football, he has progressed his output. Came from Liverpool. Before Liverpool, I forget where he was, but everywhere he's gone, he has sort of scored goals and he's improved, and he's someone who seems to be a confident player, seems to be a nice guy as well, a likeable personality, someone that I think if there was the phone call between him and Ange might say, I don't mind this one, I like this, I like the sound of this. And I don't mind Solanke. I think he does fit the system and the style, but I understand it if a lot of people think he's underwhelming. And, the question is always, does any of the teams that we're trying to compete with go for a player like him? If the answer is no, then how and why are we going to be able to close the gap by going for players that are not going to get into the teams above us anyway? I understand that mindset, but, Tottenham need improvements in a lot of areas this summer. And so with the budgets that we have, you have to bake all that stuff into mind. Solanke is a name, but for me, not quite at the top of the list. Serhou Guirassy, I mean, 30 goals this season. He smashed it last season, smashed it this season. It's his second season on the bounce now that he's done it. Is he starting to prove that it's not just a one-hit wonder? He is a late bloomer potentially. For me, I still think as I watch him, I've seen his highlights, I keep saying the same thing. It looks a lot of clumsiness to me. He looks like it's a lot by accident rather than skill, but you can't hate the numbers. His numbers are very good, and you also can't hate the numbers in terms of price tag. I think he has a very low release fee. I think it's something around 17 million quid, something like that. And he might end up at the Premier League this season, but I don't think he'll end up at Tottenham. I think he'll end up at a team slightly down the Premier League pecking order a little bit, and let's see what he does. And the last name to ring off the bell for you in terms of links, guys, is of course Xerxes over in Italy, who again, big strapping tall guy, strong muscular player that looks like he's interesting youngster. For me, he also looked a little bit clumsy, if I'm honest. I didn't particularly, when I did my due diligence on him, wasn't particularly sold on the idea, but I know a lot of you do like him. Again, I don't watch Serie A as much as I watch other leagues, so I'm happy to be convinced on him if you guys prefer that. I think that's about all the links we've been gone for. Maybe Jonathan David is the last guy, but who wants him? Not me. That guy, I think, is a bit of a flop in the making in the Premier League. I don't like him, never have, never rated him. And I know a lot of you think he's brilliant. I know he scores bags of goals in the French league, but for me, just not interested. Don't know why. Something about him turns me off him, and he's not one for me. There are all the links. Are we going to hear something soon? Oh, is Tottenham going to make an early move this summer, guys? The window isn't officially open yet, but with the Euros around the corner, the players on their 2-week break, with Tottenham saying they want to do early business, with the Euros, you've got the Copa America, with everything happening, managerial changes in the Premier League, what's going to be the first moving piece on the jigsaw, or the chessboard is out? Is it our move first? Do we have to sell players before we bring them in? Let me know your thoughts, guys. That is it for today's transfer news, views and clues update. Maybe it's just more of a kind of rehash, I'm not sure. But like, subscribe and comment anyway. I'll see you on the next one. And as always, bye-bye.